week, we're going to cover some key theories in social work practice, as well as the ways that social work is organized. So to begin with, social work practice can be conceptualized in many different ways. The conceptualization of practice varies depending on many factors, such as the role that you might find yourself in as a social worker, the activities that you're going to be performing, their frameworks from which you're operating, the purpose of the work that you're doing, and the types of practice and practice settings in which you as a social worker will be engaged in. And the set of competencies and practice behaviors social workers utilize in their practice, there are some generalizations, but there are also some differences depending on the practice setting you're in and the role that you're in as a social worker. So let's look at some of the different types of practice setting and the range of practice settings. And actually, that's one of the things I love the most about social work, is that as a profession, you have many different opportunities to do different kinds of work with people. And so some of these types of practice include direct practice, so one-on-one working with individuals and families, also group practice, working with groups, local and community development, so community organizing and that broader scope of practice. And then we're also specialized practice, such as family therapy or administration. Some of these types of settings include schools, they might include psychiatric facilities, they might be family service organizations such as child welfare. I would also include in this tribal organizations. So let's look at some of the activities and roles that social workers find themselves in. These types of activities can include advocating for policy change, facilitating an empowerment group, facilitating empowerment, the empowerment process with individuals, fundraising to support, like this example that they give in the text is disadvantaged neighborhoods, but all sorts of fundraising types of activities, or securing grants for a special project. That's also an activity and role that social workers might find themselves, or the type of activity social workers may perform. Some of these types of roles includes counselor, case manager, educator. I would also add advocate. So let's look at some of the competencies and practice behavior. So social work competencies consist of practice behaviors that social workers should be able to demonstrate in their practice settings. And that's some of what we're going to be learning about this semester and practicing those things, and some of the things especially related in your lab section of the class that you're going to have an opportunity to learn about and practice. Competencies are composed of a set of knowledge, values, skills, and attributes that social workers bring to their work. I think it's also, though, important to note that there's as many differences, and that it's important as we operate as social workers to find our own authentic ways of being. And of course, those are all influenced by our own lives, the cultural frameworks from which we operate. And so I always think that it's important to acknowledge that there is absolutely a generalized set of competencies that we should all be adhering to, and ethical standards that we should all be adhering to. But within that framework, there's just as many differences, between social workers as there are similarities. Let's look at client groupings. So this is kind of a review, but that idea that you can work with an individual, you can do individual work such as therapy or casework, you can do group work, you can do community practice. Some social workers engage in international work. And we're going to go more into this in depth as the semester progresses, but let's look at a practice framework. So the primary areas of social work practice are engagement, starting the relationship, engaging with people, creating that relationship, and then the next would be the assessment and planning. So creating the framework for which you identifying what is the challenge and what is the reason why this person or this group is engaging with you, and kind of what your role is. The next would be intervention. So what exact ways of being and what things are going to be put into place to either make change or support whatever's going on in this person's life, or this group's life, or this community's life. The next is termination. and that's ending the relationship. And many people talk about that the process of termination in social work practice should actually begin in the engagement phase. So acknowledging that in all likelihood this relationship is a professional relationship and that it will have an ending. And then the last is evaluation. And this is just to give you a general overview of these things. As the semester progresses, like I said, we'll be talking about them more in depth. So, then the book kind of goes over this idea of licensure. There's 4 types of licensure. There's or 4 types of ways of calling yourself a social worker. So there's the BSW, there's the MSW, and then there's the clinical licensure that you can receive. So some of the kind of, I guess they're referring it to as tensions in the profession, but there's always that dichotomy, and the different people come from different modes of operation. But so here are some examples of that. So whether to promote a clinical or a non-clinical approach to working with clients. I think our program tends to emphasize a little bit more of the non-clinical, although we certainly promote and educate our students on the clinical approach as well. The extent to which social workers exercise social control or promote social change, and that can vary, definitely varies according to the practice setting that you're in. The extent to which social workers promote change or acceptance of their clients. And as the semester progresses, we'll talk more in depth about that, about how do you navigate that road, especially when you're working with either mandatory clients, so clients that aren't choosing to work with you. The struggle between encouraging clients to adjust to their circumstances or to change their circumstances, and whether social workers promote their expert position or share power with their clients. And again, all of these kind of go from your own personal orientation, but they also really, really depend on the practice setting you're in. And then the adjustment to globalization by the profession.